Hi everyone, it's Scott Rogers here from eSkilled. I'm really excited to be taking you through our new funded contracts functionality. Today we're going to be looking at how to set up a funded contract for New South Wales in your student management system. So at the moment we're sitting on the dashboard page. The first thing that you would want to do to set up your contracts is navigate to the finance menu on the left hand side here. Click on finance. If you've got contracts activated in your student management system, you'll see contracts in the top menu across the top of the page here. Now, if you don't see contracts in your student management system, that means that we haven't activated it for you yet. All you have to do is get in touch with our support team at support@eskilled.com.au, and our team will happily switch that on in your system for you. Typically, systems come without it activated unless you've asked for that to be switched on through your onboarding process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on contracts. And today we're going to be setting up a contract for Smart and Skilled New South Wales. On a document over here, we've got some rules and schedules, etc., related to the New South Wales Smart and Skilled contracts, and we'll be referring to that throughout this training session. So the first thing that you would do typically in the system if you're setting up a contract, whether it be for New South Wales or any state, is you basically have a look and make sure that your outcome payment rule templates and your payment schedule rule templates are set up correctly. So the first thing that we're going to do is just open an outcome payment rule template and have a look at what that looks like for New South Wales. Here I'm going to type in New South Wales, and you'll notice that the system has nicely filtered the New South Wales payment rule template there for me. So when you get your system, you will have some templates set up for any states that you've requested funding to be set up for, or funded contracts to be set up for. We do recommend that you open any templates before you get started and have whoever's responsible for compliance in your organization review those templates and make sure that they're set up correctly to align to your funded contract. So before you do anything, that's the very first thing that you should be doing. So in this template, you can see we've got the outcomes listed down the left hand side, and through the middle here we've got some rules. So for New South Wales, we typically would select percentage of total, and we set the percentage of the amount of the total payment that you're going to get for a particular unit of competency based on that outcome. So in this scenario, if a student achieves a competent outcome, the system is going to claim 100% of the expected funding subsidy for that unit of competence, and so on and so forth down the page. You'll notice that RPL is set at 50% and credit transfer at 20% in alignment with the Smart and Skilled contract agreements. Now, if you're, like I said, if any of your values or any of these values don't align to the contract that you have with New South Wales Government, or if there's any changes, you can easily come in here and edit those, just like I am here now. So that's really all that you need to do in your payment rule template. Just basically make sure that those are correct. You can obviously set up your own payment rule templates as well if you wish to do so. I'm going to save that. Right, the next is to have a look at payment schedules. So payment schedules in the system relate specifically to the payment schedules that you're provided by the New South Wales Smart and Skilled program, or for the Smart and Skilled program. In this situation, I've got a couple of reference documents here. The one that you can see in front of me, let's get that a little bit less crazy, is the certificate level payment schedule. New South Wales also has a few other payment schedules. They have a diploma level payment schedule, and they also have an apprentice and traineeship schedule as well. So typically you'd want, if you're delivering all of those, you would want to have all of those schedules set up in the system. So that's all done through payment schedule rule templates here in the system. And if we filter by New South Wales, you can see here we've got a diploma payment schedule. We also have a certificate, Wales certificate payment schedule here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this one and edit it. And so from here you can see that we've got a few different payment rules set up. So we've got payment rule 1 here, payment rule 2, and payment rule 3. And in the payment installment name field here, we've given those names. So payment 1 we've set as commencement payment, payment 2 we've set as progress payment, and progress 3 we've called completion payment. Now those payment rules directly relate to this payment schedule. So you can see certificate commencement, certificate progress, certificate completion. So we've got the same 3 rules set up in the system. Now how rules work is we give the rule a name, we set the percentage. So in this case we've set the percentage to 20%. If we go back to our New South Wales payment rule, you'll see that the 20% directly relates to the percentage that is laid out on your New South Wales certificate level payment schedule. So really the system aligns to how New South Wales is has those payment schedules set up for you. Now you notice here you've got a program type column. If you click on the down arrow, you can add more program types if you need to, and that specifically relates to the approved qualification column here. So anything that's listed here, you would want to make sure that you've selected in your program type. So part qualification, pre-vocational, Cert 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically what that means is the system is going to claim or apply this payment to these program types. Now the next rule relates to when the system is going to claim that payment. So in this scenario we've selected at least N, and N stands for number. So at least a number of units of competence is reported with any of the following unit of competence codes. So we're selecting that, and then the next selection is we're setting the number, so that represents the N in the rule beside it. So we're saying at least 1 unit of competence is reported with any of the following outcomes, and we've set the outcomes that we wish to apply that payment claim to. Now if we go back to our New South payment rules, you'll see that directly relates to the rule that New South Wales have outlined here. So it says at least 1 unit of competence is reported with the following unit outcome code. So pretty straightforward for New South Wales. The system pretty much directly aligns to the way that New South Wales have set their payment schedules. Just something to note, when we're looking at the progress payment, there's actually 2 rules that apply here. You'll notice that it says at least 50% of the total units of competence are reported with any of the following outcome codes: 20, 30, 40, 51, or 60. And then there's a second rule, because you can see and here. So and means we have to add another rule, and the second rule is at least 1 of those units of competence is reported with a unit outcome code of 20, 30, 40, or 51. So we've got the ability to do the same. So now if we go down to payment 2, which has the two rules, you can see we're setting the payment subsidy at 40%, because that's the next progress payment percentage. But down here we've got 2 rules. The first rule is at least N%, and that's different up to the first one, because in the first one we just had at least N units of competence is reported, so at least 1 unit of competence is reported. In the next rule, we're saying at least N% of the total units of competences are reported with the following outcome codes, and we've set that percentage at 50%. So the 50% representing the N in the rule there. And you'll notice that that directly aligns to our payment schedule given to us by Smart and Skilled. So it says at least 50% of units of competence are reported with those outcome codes. So same thing, we have to set the same outcome codes that we're going to claim that payment for, and then we've got the second rule, which is and at least one of those units of competence is reported with the following outcomes. And so we've got a number 1 there to represent the N, and then we've got our outcome codes. So basically it's so on and so forth. You work through your payments and make sure that they're all aligned to your contract. Like I said, we've got these templates already set up for you in the system, so you don't need to go and recreate them, but what we do ask every RTO to do is make sure that they are compliant or aligned to your Smart and Skilled contract, and that way everything's going to be set up and claim funds correctly. Obviously you want this to be correct because it determines whether the system's going to be claiming the funds correctly or not. So we'll save that. So once you've had a look at those, the next thing that we want to look at is concessions. So I'm going to click on to concessions here, and we'll go back to our document and just find our concession information in our document here. Actually, what I'll do, I do need to open up another document for New South Wales, so I'm just going to do that quickly, because New South Wales keep their concession information on their subsidy documents. So what we're going to do here is go to New South Wales, and we're going to go to open up a Smart and Skilled fee admin policy. Just bear with me. Our pricing and fees for New South Wales. Here we go. So what we're going to do is go and find an example of a program. Let's find a certificate for in business. Here we go. Okay, so basically I've navigated to the New South Wales price and fees booklet here, and we're going to be looking at the cert for in business and setting that up. So basically we've got two fees, or two types of fees here for New South Wales. We've got the actual student fee, which has a first qualification fee and a second qualification fee. New South Wales also has a concession fee. So what we need to do first here is we're going to set up the concession fee, and in this case it's $240. I'm just going to re-highlight that so we can refer back to it shortly. So $240 is our concession rate. So what we're going to do here is we're going to filter by NSW. And you'll notice here the handy thing about New South Wales is they basically just have concession rates that are set to a contract level. So you can see here we've already got some concessions set up for you in your system, which is really handy. Again, you probably don't have to do much here other than just check that everything looks correct. So I'm going to open up Cert 3 and 4 concession here and edit that, and just explain how the concessions work. So obviously whenever you're adding a new concession, you'd set the state. You have to set the concession type. We have two concession types in our system. One is concession being a discounted rate, and then waiver is basically free. So if you're using waiver, it means that you're not charging the student any fees, and the system's literally going to set the student fees to 0. we want to give that concession a name, something that we can identify it easily with in the system if we're adding a concession to a student's enrolment. So in this case we've called it New South Wales Cert 3 and 4 concession, and we can set two types of concessions. One is rate. Rate is where we set the actual amount that the student will be paying, and discount is where we actually set a percentage which will be deducted off the standard tuition fee. In this situation, New South Wales provides the concession to you in their tables as a rate, so it's easier to set it up as a rate. In some states they provide the concession tables as discounts, and in that case you might want to select discount, but for New South Wales, rate just makes sense because that's how they report it to you. And all we have to do then is set the rate. So you'll remember on our payment table, let's get to the correct one, it's over here. Our concession rate was $240. We just want to make sure that that aligns in the system, and it does, so that's great. When we update, it's going to ask us so if we want to update all related program instances or just the one that we're editing. So if you've got a concession change and that affects all your current active programs, you probably want to select yes. If not, if you only want that concession to apply to future program instances that you set up, then you would select no there. But in this case, I would say yes. Now what we have next, so that's concessions. Concessions are pretty straightforward. And the next thing that we want to do is just check the loadings in the system and make sure they're all set up correctly. So New South Wales has two types of loadings: needs loadings and location loadings. Just go through those and check to make sure that they are correct in your system. So disability loadings, remote area loadings for location loadings, you've got ATSI loadings, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander loadings, etc. So just opening up one of those, we'll have a look at what that looks like. Basically, if you're setting up any new loadings, if new loadings are introduced to your contract, you can literally set up a new one just by selecting whether it's a needs or location, giving it a name, giving it a description. In some cases, you might want to put the eligibility criteria for that loading as well. That's a great thing to add to description, so staff, if they needed to, could reference that at a later point and understand when that loading applies. So it's going to save that. And so yeah, basically that's our loadings. Loadings are added on top of your subsidy amount when you make your funding claims. So funding sources, not as relevant for New South Wales as it is for other states that do have a huge range of funding source IDs or codes. What a lot of people like to do for New South Wales is just put a code in there for smart and skilled. You'll notice here we've got a smart and skilled funding source ID, just so it's clear, and so you might want to put that as a code of SAS, so smart and skilled. Give it a name, set the state, and you can then align that funding source ID to a funding source national code as well. So in this situation, we might select state-specific funding program, and this is obviously a VETMIS field that has to be filled out. The good thing about doing this is when the SAS, when this funding source ID code is attached to enrollment, it will automatically set the funding source national code for you on your enrollment, so you don't have to. So it's really beneficial to do that and add that to your funding payment funding schedules. So we're going to save that. And the next thing is going to set up a schedule. So basically the schedule brings together all these other templates and concessions and loadings and funding source codes that we've set up into an actual schedule that the system will use to claim the payments for you. So the next thing we'll do is we'll filter these schedules because we've got a lot in this demo system, and let's have a look at the smart and skilled one at the top here and edit that. So for this schedule, we've just given it an ID of smart and skilled, given it a name, smart and skilled, again, so we can clearly identify them in the system, and we've selected per program. Different states have different models in terms of the way that they pay subsidies. For instance, in Victoria and WA, Tasmania, they use an hour, even South Australia, they use an hour-based model where RTOs are paid an amount of money per nominal hour or scheduled hour that the student is completing. In New South Wales, the funding amount is that they provide to you is paid by the program. So for instance, keep doing that. For instance, that they'll provide you with a qualification price, and that's a total price per program. And in New South Wales, the calculation that they provide to you is the total price minus the student concession, if it's a concession-based program, or students eligible for a concession, and then the total price minus the concession fee is the subsidy, or if there's no concession fee, the way that the subsidy is calculated is the total price from the schedule, your price schedule, minus the student fee equals the subsidy. So that's how New South Wales calculate subsidies. It's different in every state, of course, and you definitely need, if you're reporting for another state or doing funding for another state, you'll need to make sure that you set up according to those schedules. But for New South Wales, that's how we work. So it's a per program model. Obviously we need to set the state there, and then we need to attach any concessions that we've set up that are relevant to this program, or to this schedule. So we can select all that are relevant, we just don't need to select one. And yeah, so in this case we might set up New South Wales Cert 3 and 4, and we might set up that should do us, I think. Okay, and then so basically select all concessions that apply to this payment schedule. The next thing that we need to do is attach our payment rule template. This has already been done in this one, but it's simply just a matter of selecting it from the list. It's only going to show you the outcome templates that relate to the state that you've selected for the schedule. In this case we only have one already. And then the last, obviously you want to check through those percentages and make sure that they're correct before you proceed. And then we're going to go to the payment rules, and again, because we've already set these up in our payment schedule or rule templates, we can now simply just go through and check that they're all correct. We don't need to complete those every time, which is great. And if we're happy with all of that, then we can just submit. So for smart and skilled, you would want to set up a schedule for both the Cert 4, so the certificate level schedule. So basically you would want to set up a schedule for each schedule. So certificate level payment schedule, a diploma level payment schedule, and an apprentice payment schedule. The reason being is that the rules are all different for each of these program types, so you need to set up all three of those in the system to make sure you're able to claim those for the relevant programs. That's important when you get to set up your contract, because once you do that before you set up your contract. So the contract is typically the last thing that you'll set up once you've set up all these other things, and that's just a matter of opening up a new one. But in this case we're just going to go to one that we've already created, so we can show you one that's been populated, and we might choose this New South Wales Smart and Skilled one here. So basically in the contract You're going to have your contract ID. You're going to have a name for that contract. Often RTOs will put the year that contract is applicable to, so you can keep a track of the correct contract year as you start to move through different funding contract periods. You obviously need to select the state for that contract, and in this scenario, in this field, you're going to say whether you want to populate the contract ID to the purchasing contract identifier. In this contract, we're going to say no. And so the purchasing, just to explain that a bit more, the purchasing contract identifier is a eventness reporting field or a training activity reporting field. If you're setting up a contract for a state where you're required to report your contract ID to the purchasing contract ID field in your training activity reports, then you would select yes. For New South Wales, I'm pretty sure, 90% sure, it should be no. Obviously, you would want to make sure that you've checked your contract and reporting requirements before you set that. Commencement date, you would want to set the beginning of that contract and the end of that contract date, and then you would want to set your funding cap amount, whatever you've been approved as your funding cap for your contract. Next is where we set up the schedule. So for this contract, if you've set up a Cert 4 schedule and a diploma schedule and an apprentice schedule, as we looked at here, you would want to attach all of those to your contract here. So we might add the Cert level contract, and we might add the diploma level schedule and the Cert level schedule there. And we might get rid of this one. And the funding source code that we set up before, we would also want to make sure we've got that added in there. And then the next thing we need to do is select any of the loadings that are applicable to this contract. In this case, it would be all the New South Wales loadings that we want to include, so we're just making sure all of those are ticked. You could put a description in your contract as well if you like, but other than that, it's not required, and in this situation we're just going to save it like that. And now we've got our contract all set up, ready to go. So it's not too painful to set up contracts because most of it is already set up in templates for you, as you can see. Once you've got your contract set up, that's pretty much it until you get your next contract. But other than that, we've got to apply that contract to the programs that it's applicable to. So now we're going to go to programs. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is add it to your program. So now we're going to go to stage 2. Going to go to program instances, and we're going to select New South Wales funded here, and you'll notice we're on the 40120. The Cert 4 in Business program that we were looking at in our fees schedule over here. And a couple of things to note on the details page that are relevant to your funded contracts. These fields down the bottom: requires vocational placement or host employer. That's pretty important for traineeships and apprenticeships particularly, or SBAT. School-based apprenticeships, where so you need to set that to yes if a student is going to be doing some work placement. The other thing that you might want to ensure you complete if you're delivering in a partnership with another RTO is to set this field to yes, and you'll notice if that's set to no, partner RTO disappears down here. If I set it to yes, then I need to select who that partner RTO is. This is selecting from the company's from your company's menu and any companies that you've got set up there. So if your partner RTO isn't showing here, it means you haven't entered them into the company section of your student management system yet. We've got a few dummy companies set up there, so I'll just select them as my partner RTO. Other than that, the details page is pretty standard to your normal, setting up your normal program instances. I'm just going to update that. And then we're going to go to the Eventmas tab. So on the Eventmas tab, if you've selected a state here for state reporting, you'll notice that you've also got a contracts section on your right hand side. If you've selected National Eventmas reporting state, you won't see that same contracts section there on the right. So if you're in there and you're not seeing it, it's probably because you haven't selected a state. Basically the next setting, the settings on the left here that are important is just setting a default funding source for that program, and setting the delivery mode for that program, and whether it's vet and skills, and nominal hours will calculate from your units that you've created. So if you've got units attached to your program instance there, the system will automatically calculate your nominal hours for that program instance right there. Just below that, we've got the program contact details. This information is particularly important if you're producing training plans for your students, so this information will be populated onto that training plan, so make sure you do fill that out if you are setting up training plans for your students, or producing training plans for your students. The next part is where we select or attach the contract to this particular program. So in this one, when I've just selected a New South Wales contract, you'll notice that it's because there's only one schedule attached to this contract, there's only one to select from here. If I had another, let's just see if I've got one in here. Yeah, so if there's a contract where you've got multiple schedules, you'll notice that it doesn't default. I have to select the relevant one for this program. In this case, it's a Cert 4, so we're going to select the Cert 4 schedule there to make sure we've got the correct schedule for this Cert 4 program. So typically in New South Wales, you would have more than one schedule there, because if you're approved for both Cert 4 and diploma contracts, then yeah, you'll need multiple schedules to claim those funds. Associated course ID is only relevant if a program was superseded, in which case then you would associate the superseded course with the new course. Apprenticeship program, traineeship program, and SBAT program, you'll notice these are just yes/no fields. We need to say whether this program is an apprenticeship, traineeship, or SBAT, or all three. So it's just a matter of selecting yes or no there. And next is the concessions section, and for the concessions section we need to enable any concessions that are relevant. So we wouldn't want to enable the Cert 2 concession here, because this is a Cert 4 program, so we'd want to make sure that we've enabled the Cert 3 and 4 concession for this program. So next section down is training plans, and this is just information that's going to pre-populate on your training plans for this program. So if there was a partner RTO, you would select that. If there's a vocational title for this qualification, you'd put it here for this program. That will automatically populate on the training plan. That's a field on the training plan. And then the default training mode, whether it's classroom, employment based, electronic, etc. So if you've got different modes for different units, don't worry, you can still set that on the units at the unit level. This is just going to set a default one when the enrollment's created to streamline the process for completing the training plan. So I would just select the most relevant default training mode there, and the system will automatically populate that on the enrollment, and you can change any units that might have a different default training mode. So that's pretty much our Vetness tab complete. Once we're happy with that, we can obviously update to make sure we don't lose any of the information we've entered. Next is the enrollment form. Just some things to note about enrollment form is that often we've got the payment gateway disabled, and that allows students to complete the enrollment form and come through to the through into your system as application received, so you can then check the student's eligibility for that funding, and also do any make sure you've got obviously all of your paperwork in order, or your information that you need, evidence that you need of eligibility in order before you process that enrollment and take payment from the student. So the online enrollment form will still work as normal, but typically for funded enrollments you would have the payment gateway turned off to so students can come into the system as application received rather than be automatically enrolled, so you can do those compliance checks and balances. Go to units. It's fairly important that you've got all your units set up correctly, so just make sure there's no blank fields on your units table. You've selected the delivery mode, predominant delivery mode. That's important because of all of that information is going to be populated to the students' units on enrollment, and if it's not complete you'll have to go and edit that on the student record for every student. So you always want to make sure you've got all of your units set up correctly there. And then financial tab is where we set the tuition fees. This program is just a dummy program. It's got a lot of different tuition fees there, but typically in a Smart and Skilled program, if we went back to our fee structure, you probably have two fees in there. You'd have your first qualification and your second qualification there. So let's just go and edit one of those fees, and I'll just see if I've got one set up as first qualification. We haven't, so let's go and set one up. So let's select tuition fee, and we might call this first qualification. And so we're going to set this up as first qualification tuition fee. We put in the student fee. So if we go back to our table, in this case, if we scroll across, we need to find our cert foreign business. It's here. And if we set our first qualification tuition fee is $1,580, so we're going to set that as students paying $1,580, and then we have to put in the total program fee, which is $6,190, and you'll notice that the system automatically calculates the per program amount, so we don't have to do that. The system knows that New South Wales, the calculation is total price minus the student fee equals the subsidy, so the system's doing that calculation for you there. So we're going to save that. And that's it. So now we've got our first qualification tuition fee set up. So like I said, you would probably want to go through and set up your second qualification fee there as well, so you can select that when you're processing the student's enrollment, and select the relevant tuition fee for that student. And that's pretty much a program set up. So the only other thing you might want to consider, which is really useful, is setting up a workflow, a task workflow. So if you go to workflows in your program instance and going to task workflows here, you can set up a checklist task which will be automatically created for new enrollments into this program, and you could attach a checklist template which has your your smart and skilled checks that you need to do for eligibility, for instance, any evidence that you need from the student, etc., in a checklist format. So, and that can be automatically assigned to your enrollment coordinators. If you select, you can attach a task template to a individual or to a group. So if you have a few enrollment coordinators, that can go to that team, and that'll show on people's to-do tasks, and as soon as that enrollment comes in, they'll get a task to review that application and process that application and make sure all the relevant criteria has been met for eligibility, and upon doing all of that, they can set that student to enrolled, and away you go, and the system is all automated for you. So I really recommend using task workflows for any of your enrollment procedures to streamline that process and automate it so nothing is missed in your enrollment workflow. So other than that, we've completed the first part of your contracts training, where we've shown you how to set up your contracts in the system and then apply your contract to your program instance. Obviously, you would have a program instance for all of your different funded programs, and I often recommend having different program instances. If you've got an apprenticeship program versus just a standard student program, to have them set up as program instances, so you can have the relevant schedules and all the relevant settings automatically set up for that program instance. So when students enroll, their enrollments are populated with all the correct settings and payment claim information. So part 2 of this will be taking you through how to enroll a student into this program. So if you're happy with everything at this point, jump in and have a look at that, and once you've completed that training, you'll be right to start enrolling students into your funded program. So thanks for watching this tutorial. We hope you got a lot out of it. If you have any questions or queries or anything unanswered, please feel free to give our support team a call or send them an email on support@eskill.com.au. We look forward to taking you through the next tutorial. Thank you.